Yeah, see what was developed through the course of 2008 and onward, co-governance type issues, was a very clever way of skirting around the look, the elephant in the room, ownership, right?
Absolutely.
Because when people get allocated water rights, they monetize them. Either 70 litres a day goes into that cow, and that cow then grows through the water, processed, tons of water used there. It's exported, export earnings come in. So all our water is monetarized one way or the other, right? And at the end of the day, haven't we got a right to ask the question, well, who gave you the rights to take those things and monetize those things? And in the normal course of events, as the King has said at 2 Koronehana that I have been the last two, the water, we own the water. Where do you see this thing heading?
Clearly, that is the next issue to be addressed. The issue of ownership over water is in my view, probably the most important issue of our time. And there are two ways we can do it. One, you litigate in the courts, or two, you go head to head in a set of negotiations that are both reasonable and respectful in terms of the Crown and its treaty partners vis-a-vis iwi hapu around the country. So, we are preparing right now for that, JT. We think that as we settle this issue around the three waters, as we work with the Crown to set up the framework for three waters to better manage our waterways, both the storm, fresh water, and wastewater. I think once we can tidy that up, get some certainty and some confidence going forward in relation to making sure that our people get affordable water, quality water, is done. And once that's done, we will then push on with I believe what is the most important issue to face Māoridom. That is the ownership of water.
Yeah, now you're well down the track as an iwi in this regard. Your first settlement signed in 1994, was it?
Yeah. 1995. Nobody was signed.
Yes, and then because you had some visionaries driving the settlement, you were able to revisit a whole bunch of other issues, water being one of them. Yeah. And the last government, which is always iterative, got you into a co-governance arrangement on the river, right? So did the Wanganui River. Yeah. So here's my view. To what extent do you have a conversation with the power generators on the Waikato to say, hey, time's up. There's got to be a levy here.
Yeah.
Because that's coming surely.
Oh, yeah. Look, it's a no-brainer. There is no doubt. I was in Christchurch yesterday, meeting with the chair of NATO, and from what I can gather in terms of their own push in relation to their mana over water, so they're in the courts now. It is. We will get there. There is no doubt about that. I don't have much. For me, that is the very issue that I need to get to as soon as I can. And my iwi have been insisting that we continue to progress that issue in a much more rapid and certain way. So I think what is going to colour this, in my view, is that once the Māori Party becomes the kingmaker of the next government, I think you're going to see a different kind of political environment in this country, which I think it'll be much more favourable in terms of where Māori need to get to, both socially, economically, culturally, and of course these very serious issues around.
Have we lost you, Tuku?
No.
I thought. Here's the thing, Tuku. You just need to send your CV in. It sounds like you want to be the Māori Party candidate for Hauraki Waikato again.
No. We have to determine how to shape our own future, and the only way you're going to do that, push your vote in.
Yep.
And so we're going to get behind, our people. Rawiri Waititi's doing a fantastic job. He's out there. He's a strong brand, saying the right things, and just changing the whole sort of this nonsense of we have to be good Māori, tolerant Māori.
Not with the nice white brown ones. But that's good. No, good on you, bro. Because because we've been around a long time, seen one another, and you've suffered for your stands, right? We all do.
Yeah.
Like what they did over Māori TV, all that sort of bullshit, you know. But anyway, bro. Yeah, but anyway, bro, you've recovered with vengeance, and that's the trouble. That's the problem. That's the problem for others. But kei te mihi nunui ki a koe, te rangatira too much, brother. Okay.
Te rangatira. Tēnā koe.
Kia
ora.
First of all, Mr. Chair, I welcome the comments of the speaker from the ACT Party, not because they were inherently worthwhile, although some of them probably were, but in part because it was a much better speech than I thought it was going to be, because we were treated to some fairly despicable comments by the ACT Party last week when this Waikato Tainui Raupatu Claims Bill appeared for the first time before this House. And so the reference to hocus pocus and to that categorising of another worldview, I thought was disrespectful and unfortunate at the very least, and despicable at worst. And at that time I said, Mr. Chair, that while I do not have or share or was born into the same ontological perspective or worldview that Māori have, that doesn't stop me from appreciating it, appreciating an ontology that is different from my own. However, one of the things that I do celebrate in appreciating different ontologies and different worldviews is that this piece of legislation actually sets down in black and white some very significant and unique pieces of language that would be found nowhere else in the world. And I think that is significant and should be brought to the attention of this House. So, for example, in Part 2, in the Statement of Significance of Waikato River to Waikato Tainui, it says, the Waikato River is our tupuna, and it's translated in brackets as ancestor, which has mana, in brackets, spiritual authority and power, and in turn represents the mana and mauri, in brackets, life force, of Waikato Tainui. The Waikato River is a single, indivisible being that flows from Te Taheke Huka Huka to Te Puaha o Waikato, the mouth, and includes its waters, banks and beds and all minerals under them, and its streams, waterways, tributaries, lakes, aquatic fisheries, and so on. And it goes on to say, as well as its metaphysical being. Our relationship with the Waikato River and our respect for it gives rise to our responsibilities to protect te mana o te awa and to exercise our mana whakahaere in accordance with long-established tikanga to ensure the well-being of the river. Our relationship with the river and our respect for it lies at the heart of our spiritual and physical well-being and our tribal identity and culture. Now that is to be celebrated, Mr. Chairman. That is to be celebrated, that kind of characterisation, that kind of description of a relationship that is from a different ontology,
Mr. Maryan
Chair.
Street.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That is from an ontology which is not universally shared, but may be appreciated as part of the foundation of this nation. And I do understand what it means to be a native of Aotearoa New Zealand as a partner in Te Tiriti. I do understand that. And I recognise that this is the way, in fact, that Indigenous people may achieve recognition, status, respect, legal recognition, accord, and in this case, authority over a natural resource. And I welcome that, Mr. Chairman. I think it is part of where we have come in our journey in working through treaty settlements.
We've learned a new word here tonight, or at least I have, from the Honourable Maryan Street, ontologies, and I haven't had time to go and check a dictionary and I don't have a laptop. I suspect it means world views, I've taken from the context. And the Honourable Maryan Street talked about competing world views, and that's fine. That's absolutely fine. I don't care whether one believes that the Waikato River is a living entity with a life force. And I don't care whether Mr. Findlayson still holds to the religion I was imbued with as a young boy, that believes that a piece of wafer on the ringing of a bell literally becomes flesh and blood of Christ. As a man of 51, I find it absurd. But if Mr. Findlayson wishes to, if the Honourable Chris Findlayson wishes to continue to believe it, that's his business. I have no problem with that. If other people wish to believe in the tooth fairy, I have no problem with that. A number of New Zealanders have declared their religion in the last 20 years or so as Jedi, taken from, I believe, a series of science fiction films in the 1980s. Who cares? That's their business. But, Mr. Chairman, what we're having here is a world view of a specific narrow group of Maori foisted upon not just Pākehā New Zealanders, but other Maori, Mr. Chairman. We are supposed to have a secular government, and yet we have seen highways delayed because of the alleged presence of a taniwha. This is the same kind of thing. Mr. Chairman, no one in this country, whether they be Maori, Pākehā, Chinese, whatever, should have to have their plans and their lives not disrupted. That's not the word I was looking for at all. Governed by the ontology or the religion or the superstition of others. And it's very, very easy, Mr. Chairman, when you get this kind of bill full of vague terms, undefined as it is. The writer on environmental matters, Owen McShane, has said many landowners and resource users will find they're having to deal with evidence based on religious belief rather than scientific or experiential evidence. Mr. Chairman, one can measure environmental and economic impact, but it is impossible to measure the impact or calculate the impact of development, any kind of development, or any kind of use for that matter, on a life force. You can't do it. That won't stop those with vested interests, Mr. Chairman, whatever race they are, from doing it. It will be very tempting for those to claim some damage to the river's life force, or Māori, I understand is the Maori word, in order to block competition to their own economic projects. Tempting, Mr. Chairman, and I dare say inevitable. This bill gives control to a tiny elite group backed by those hardcore environmentalists who are opposed to any kind of development. See in this, Mr Chairman?
David Garrett.
See in this religion, this ancient animistic religion, a vehicle to assist their own fringe causes. Mr Chairman, the people of Auckland should be worried by this. The Waikato River is an important source of water to the Auckland region. How will the co-governance model respond to demands of a growing population north of the Bombay Hills? Will the needs of the human population be too much of a strain on the metaphysical being that is allegedly the Waikato River? Will its mythical inhabitants, or its Māori, thank you, I'm trying my best, be more important than the very real people whose actual... Will you give it a go, Mr Cosgrove? You never even bother. Yeah, do you? It's not very good. Will that be more important, Mr Speaker, than the real human beings whose actual life force depends on that water? Mr Chairman, this bill is packed with phrases which won't mean anything until case law defines them, and we've seen that before. I touched on, Mr Harawira is affirming that is so. We've got an activist Supreme Court in that edifice across the road who will be quite happy to define things that are left vague in this bill, Mr Chairman. They've done it before and they'll do it again. They're looking forward to it, I'm sure. This is another example of how a very few Māori in the elite have gained disproportionate power thanks to the Maori Party's deal with the National Party.
So when Māori assert claims to be kaitiaki of a place, it is often seen as an assertion of a right, and indeed it is a right. Kaitiaki have rights to places. But what is often overlooked, that it is also an acceptance of a very significant and absolute and indeed an unavoidable responsibility. And I believe it is that responsibility, that sense of duty, that drives iwi, hapu and whānau to have the determination to maintain the claims, to maintain the effort, not just for years or for decades, but over generations. And it is that sense of responsibility and duty to our land, to our rivers, to our mountain, and indeed to our whānau that maintains that energy, that commitment, that determination, and I do offer respect to that.
I'm very excited that we are moving into a more sophisticated era under Te Tiriti o Waitangi, moving beyond the limited concept of conservative Pākehā, one man, one vote, as the only manifestation of democracy that is possible in Aotearoa. I stand as a Pākehā proud to live with Te Tiriti o Waitangi as our finding document, and absolutely committed to finding new ways to find a way through the colonisation effects of the past. And only people who don't understand what colonisation means can say that this is not a step forward, that the co-management that's being proposed is not an incredibly positive model for Pākehā, for tanga te tiriti, for tauiwi katoa, as well as for Māori.
We came to nationhood with no legacy of bitterness, no old scores to pay off. True, Maori and Pākehā came to blows, but there was also valour and honour and restraint on both sides. And we emerged from this testing period with a great respect for each other. And so now we look to Britain, to each other, to other countries with respect, with friendship, and yes, with love. We are born in peace, and so we commemorate as New Zealand Day not an act of violence, but an act of trust and a pledge of cooperation. This is part of our nation's inheritance, and we should never forget it. We were born in peace and justice, and we shall deal peacefully and justly with each other, with our neighbours, and with all peoples.
Honourable Chris Findlayson.
Mr Speaker, in its journey from Lake Taupo to the sea, the mighty Waikato River flows through the heartland of Waikato Tainui and the iwi who have agreed to participate in its co-governance. The relationship of the iwi with the river lies at the heart of their spiritual and physical well-being and their identity. To Waikato Tainui, the river is a tupuna which has mana. As New Zealand's longest river, the Waikato is an important natural feature in our country, as well as being a resource of strategic importance. In the bygone era of the 19th century, Waikato Tainui enjoyed a golden age of peace and prosperity. Large areas of the Waikato were cultivated for wheat, potatoes, maize and kumara. Several flour mills were established. Waikato Tainui were among the first to trade in value-added exports, with ships taking flour to Australia. Waikato Māori even established their own trading bank, but peace and prosperity were to be short-lived. The huge pressure for land for rapidly growing numbers of settlers led to the formation of the Kingitanga in 1858. Its purpose was to place tribal lands under the protection and mana of the king as a guarantee against sale. With this head-on clash of aspirations, Crown forces invaded in 1863. 1.2 million acres were seized. With the valuable Waikato territory now held by the Crown, land was quickly allocated to settlers. It was estimated in 1995 that the true value of the land loss was around $12 billion.